Hello. For this Environmental Health in the News article assignment, I'm going to be looking at an article called The Huge Untapped Potential of Planting Rooftop Gardens in Cities by Matt Simon. All right, so this article was really interesting to me. Authors and many other people mentioned in the article talk about having roofs in America, especially in larger cities, where the roofs really aren't being used for anything, and there's a lot of acreage of which are rooftops in cities, of course. How we could turn those into garden areas with plant life. So they dive into the infrastructure needs of being able to support the soil, the plants, and the water absorbed, and potential benefits that could come with this. All right, so looking at some of the benefits that could come from rooftop gardens mentioned in this article, one of the big ones that stood out to me was the possibility for a reduction of urban heat island effect. What the urban heat island effect is, a lot of this material in cities, big cities in America, asphalt, concrete, they don't absorb the heat from the sun, they just radiate it back into the atmosphere. So there's potential for these plant life and the soil with them to absorb heat and reduce that urban heat island effect, thus giving us lower temperatures in cities in those warmer months. Why this would be beneficial? It would reduce heat stress, reduce the risk of heat stroke, and with that also benefiting mental health in these hot areas. Another potential benefit that the article talks about is the possibility for these rooftop gardens to act as community or local areas. They could be used for hosting events or just as a local park kind of situation. So, why this would be beneficial? Local parks and green spaces. They've been found to increase mental health in cities, especially ones that don't have that many green spaces. So there's the potential for these areas to act as green spaces in larger cities. And along with this, there's the potential actually for citizens and people living in these buildings to partake in this. Upkeep of the gardens, taking care of the plants, watering them. Gardening can be a very peaceful thing. It can be good for your mental health, so that's another benefit that could potentially come from these residential rooftop gardens. A couple other side benefits that could come with rooftop gardens, they could actually expand the lifetime of the rooftops. Gardens, plant life, and soils, as I said, they absorb sunlight, and usually rooftops, they're exposed to that sunlight and put through vicious heat cycles throughout the day, and then at night are cooled down. So that expansion and contraction can shorten the lifespan of these rooftops, which the gardens would negate. And another thing with that, the soil and the plants themselves, they absorb runoff and rainwater and could reduce flooding in cities. And of course, people could benefit from these rooftop gardens as the plants would eventually produce fruits and vegetables. Cucumbers and watermelon especially have proven to have been able to grow fairly well and produce large fruits at these higher elevations. Another thing that these plant life on rooftops could actually coincide with is solar panels. They've found that plant life can grow under solar panels depending on what kind of plant you're using. And with that, the plants could also need less watering since the solar panels would give them shade, and perhaps even less soil on the rooftops since these plants wouldn't have to hold as much water. And from an ecological perspective, these rooftop gardens, if they were equipped with native plants, could support biodiversity. They could act as stops for pollinators or other organisms that may use them as habitat and benefit other native plant life around them. So, who would be affected most by this? I would say, first and foremost, city residents, that urban heat island effect mentioned earlier, helping to reduce that. But overall, also climate change, as plant life is a big buffer that we see in the natural world when it comes to climate change. This is an important thing to consider because it would really help our already bustling and busy cities and artificial world become a little bit greener. It would be a direct fight against climate change. It could bring green spaces to areas that don't really have many. Potential to improve mental health for those citizens by having green areas, and also serving to support biodiversity in these regions. So most of the voices that we hear in this article are from like-minded individuals and professionals in the field that are fighting for green roof spaces and green usage of cities overall. There's a couple voices from agrovoltaic researchers who study this kind of stuff, and a couple voices from associations that are fighting for green spaces in cities. Having read this article, I was really excited. It's not really something I've thought about much, but I can definitely see the benefits that could come from it, especially when combating climate change and that urban heat island effect. But also from a community level, I think it's something that people could collaborate on, and it could really benefit mental health for residents. A question that rose from this article for me is if there's any cities, large cities in America, that are kind of pushing for the implementation of these rooftop gardens yet, and what could we as citizens do to support this and push for it?